Okay, welcome to today's episode of Sports Report Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Karter Longie. Today I've got a great episode planned for you all. We're doing our first ever YouTube video, so if you're watching on YouTube, I hope you like the visual effect of getting to actually see me. But we do have actually a really good episode planned. As a lot of you know, in Tuesday's episode, we didn't do our typical NFL week recap due to our interview with John Finkel, which was really great. Make sure you go check that out. And also just kind of the fact, too, that the Steelers and Ravens hadn't played yet. So it also kind of worked out that since they hadn't played yet, we can still include their game in this recap. So our topics will be a Week 12 NFL recap and then also a Week 13 NFL recap. We'll be doing a college football Week 13 recap as well as a Week 14 preview for college football. And then we're going to finish up with some NBA talk. The Lakers' 2 stars signed deals long-term, so we'll go over those quickly. And Russell Westbrook, as many of you know, requested a trade a few weeks ago, and he was shipped out of town, so we're going to cover that too. As always, we're sponsored by Earned It. Very nice hats. I'm wearing mine right now as I record. Make sure you get yourself one. I still got some in stock, plenty in stock. Hit me up. Get yourself a hat. They're very nice. $25. Trucker-style hat. They're super nice. Get yourself one. Big thank you to Earned It for sponsoring us. And that's about all I got for my intro. So now let's get into the episode. All right, so as you all know, we usually start with our NFL recaps from the previous week. And so we're going to start with that as usual. So it was Week 12 in the NFL, and it began with Thursday night football, or Thursday afternoon football. It was Thanksgiving. It's already been a full week since that now, but so we are still discussing our Thanksgiving games. So first game of the week was Texans at Lions in a annual Thanksgiving game with the Lions, and the Lions got pummeled. Texans won 41-25. Deshaun Watson was 17 for 25, 318 yards with 4 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was David Johnson. He had 9 carries for 37 yards. Their leading receiver was Will Fuller, the 5th. He had 6 receptions for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think if the Texans were a better team, Deshaun Watson would definitely be in the MVP conversation. He's had a phenomenal year, and it's been really underrated, I feel like. He's played very, very well for how bad his team's been, and all props to Deshaun Watson for trying to keep the Texans afloat. Also, another note is Will Fuller was suspended due to violating the NFL's substance abuse policy, so I believe he's done for the rest of the year. He was suspended 4 to 6 weeks. He was just starting to really break out, so that's kind of tough news for the Texans and Texans fans. As for the Lions, Matt Patricia got fired. I'm sure a lot of you know that by now. So he's gone. It was probably quite well deserved and a long time coming. I know quite a few Lions fans were actually donating to Deshaun Watson's charity in kind of thanking him for finally getting Patricia out the door. So that was kind of funny by some of their fans. But it was a long time coming, and I'm sure that's why Lions fans were so happy. But as for the game, Matthew Stafford was 28 for 42 with 295 yards, a touchdown and a pick. As for rushing, Adrian Peterson led them with 15 carries for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. So AP was still getting it done at the old age. And in terms of receiving, the second-year tight end, TJ Hawkinson, had 5 receptions for 89 yards. So both these teams are now 4-7. Neither of them are going to make the playoffs. The Lions now have a different coach due to their firing of Matt Patricia, and Houston fired Bill O'Brien earlier in the year, as many of you maybe remember. So, there wasn't a lot of playoff implications with this game. But, like I said, Deshaun Watson, all props to him for carrying Houston this year. And Patricia is gone. Next game we have, it was another Thanksgiving one. It was the Washington football team at the Dallas Cowboys. Again, the Cowboys and the Lions always host their Thanksgiving games. So this was another Thanksgiving Day game. It was Washington winning this one in a rout, 41-16. Washington improves to 4-7. They're tied for the division lead in the NFC East, but the Giants do hold the tiebreaker over them. As for Dallas, they fall to 3-8, and they haven't looked pretty at all this year. But getting into the game, Alex Smith was starting. He's back from that brutal leg injury a couple years ago. He was 19 for 26, 149 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Not a bad game from Alex Smith. But rushing is where the Washington football team got the job done. Antonio Gibson had 20 carries for 115 yards and 3 touchdowns. A really, really great game from him. And Terry McLaurin continues to be their number one receiver game after game. He had 7 receptions for 92 yards. As for Dallas, Andy Dalton was back, starting at quarterback. He was 25 for 35, 215 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. As for their ground game, Ezekiel Elliott's struggles continued. He only had 10 carries for 32 yards. Not a great game from him. And receiving-wise, that was about their only plus, I guess. Amari Cooper had 6 catches for 112 yards and a touchdown, so pretty decent game from him. Typical kind of NFC East game. Neither of these teams were good, but Washington is tied for the lead in the NFC East now, so that was a pretty good win for them. As for the Cowboys, no way that they win the division. I think they're going to get last. I think the Giants, the football team, and the Eagles are all better than them. So they need to figure something out quickly. I mean, obviously they don't have Dak Prescott, but they didn't look that great before Dak got injured either. However, I do think they would be considerably better if they still had Dak. The Mike McCarthy hiring, I don't really know about that. They haven't looked super well coached either. Next game, though, is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders at the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons blew out the Raiders. The final score was 43-6. Falcons improved to 4-7. Raiders dropped to 6-5. I did not see this coming. I thought that the Raiders would win this game. The Falcons haven't looked great throughout the year, and this was a bad loss by the Raiders, really bad. So looking at their stats, Derek Carr was 22 for 34, 215 yards and a pick. Josh Jacobs did not have a good day on the ground, 7 carries for 27 yards, and receiving, Hunter Renfrow led them 7 catches, 73 yards. As for Atlanta, kind of shown by the scoreboard, they had a good day. Matt Ryan, 22 for 39, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Rushing-wise, Ito Smith had 12 carries for 65 yards and 1 touchdown. And receiving, Calvin Ridley had 6 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, it was a really good win by Atlanta. They played very, very well. But as for Las Vegas, that was a very concerning loss. I was riding high on them last week after they played the Chiefs close again. I thought they were the best 6-4 team in the league, and this just completely proved me wrong. Really disappointing loss by the Raiders, but pretty solid win by the Falcons, I have to say that. So once again, Falcons 43-6. They improved to 4-7. Raiders fall to 6-5. Next game we're going to be looking at is the Chargers at the Bills. The Chargers win another close one. However, they did, I believe this was their first loss by more than a possession this year. Buffalo won 27-17. They improved to 8-3 and continued to hold their lead in the AFC East. As for the Chargers, they fall to 3-8. Not a great year from them. Looking at the stats, though, Justin Herbert threw the ball 52 times, completed 31 of those passes for 316 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Rushing-wise, Austin Eckler was back. He had 14 carries for 44 yards. He was also their leading receiver. He had 11 catches for 85 yards. As for Buffalo, Josh Allen was 18 for 24, 157 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Devin Singletary carried the load for them on the ground, 11 carries for 82 yards. And receiving-wise, I don't even know who this receiver is. I believe it's Gabe Davis. I didn't write down the full first name, but 3 receptions for 79 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs only had 7 catches for 39 yards. That was kind of surprising. He's been one of the top receivers in the league this year. But I don't know. This game wasn't super interesting, I didn't think, because the Chargers haven't been very good all year. Or, I mean, they've been decent, but they just haven't been able to close out wins. As for the Bills, I just see them winning their division. I guess I don't think they have a lot of like real interesting games, I guess. Maybe some games against Miami. I know they play Pittsburgh in maybe a week or two. So keep an eye on the Bills, I guess. Maybe they somehow, I don't know. I feel like the Bills are pretty set in the 3 seed right now. But then again, the Titans played very well against the Colts this week, which we'll get to that game. But I guess the Bills maybe should look out below for the AFC South champion coming up for their 3rd seed. Next game, we got Giants at Bengals. Now, as I mentioned, the Giants and the football team are tied for first place in the NFC East. That was because the Giants got the win this week, moving to 4-7, 19-17 over the Bengals, who fell to 2-8-1 in their first game without Joe Burrow. So looking at the stats, we had Daniel Jones completing 16 passes out of 27 attempts for 213 yards. However, Jones was hurt during the game, and he's supposed to be out for a game or two. They don't expect it to be serious, but he is going to be missing a couple of games, so that's kind of a blow to the Giants, who are looking to probably win their division. I think they're the best team in the NFC East right now, the way the Eagles are playing. So Colt McCoy came in. He was 6 for 10 for 31 yards. New York rushing-wise, Wayne Gallman had 24 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown, and their leading receiver was Evan Ingram. He had 6 catches for 129 yards there for the Giants. At quarterback for the Bengals was Brandon Allen. He was 17 for 29, 136 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Giovanni Bernard was their leading carrier. He had 8 carries for 32 yards. And the rookie T. Higgins was the leading receiver. He had 5 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown. Now, the Giants didn't look great in this game. They should have probably beat up on the Bengals a little bit more without Joe Burrow. However, a win's a win, and in the NFC East, anytime you get a win, that's good because, I mean, the division's terrible, so anytime you get a win, that's good. But it is a little concerning that Daniel Jones may miss a couple games. That could really hurt the Giants, but I fully expect them to be in the race towards the end in the NFC East. Next game, we got Titans at Colts. This was a big one. Had tons of playoff implications. The Colts beat the Titans earlier in the year. I thought the Colts were going to win the division. They'd beaten the Packers last week. They were looking pretty good, and then they got pummeled this week. 45-26. Titans moved to 8-3, taking the division lead. Sole possession of the division lead. Colts fall to 7-4. So, Derrick Henry ran all over these guys. But first of all, Ryan Tannehill was still the quarterback. So he was 13 for 22, 221 yards, and a touchdown. But like I said, Derrick Henry is where it was at. 27 carries, 178 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Fantastic game from Derrick Henry. Receiving-wise, A.J. Brown led them 4 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown. And for the Colts, looking at their stats, Phillip Rivers was 24 for 42, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Nyheim Hines was their leading rusher. He had 10 carries for 29 yards. Jonathan Taylor was out for this game. I believe he was on the COVID reserve list. And receiving, T.Y. Hilton had 4 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. He was their leader. So that was definitely a big game. I did not expect the Titans to blow them out like that. I thought it would be much closer. But now the Titans have sole possession of the AFC South. They're tied in terms of record with the Bills now. So they could very well get to that 3 seed. I think the 1 and the 2 are probably locked up by the Steelers and the Chiefs. But those 2 teams will probably be duking it out now for 3 and 4. Next game is going to be the Panthers at the Vikings. The Vikings got a very narrow win in this one. I believe they won on a game-winning field goal. It was 28-27 was the final score. Maybe it wasn't a game-winning field goal. It might have just been a touchdown. I can't remember for sure, but I kind of thought it was a field goal. Maybe not. Don't quote me on that. Anyways, Vikings won, though, 28-27. They moved to 5-6. They're still in the playoff hunt in the NFC because I believe the Cardinals lost this week. As for the Panthers, they fall to 4-8. Nobody had huge expectations for the Panthers this year. I expected them to win about 5 games, which it looks like they probably will. So, they've looked pretty decent, though, for a good young team. Matt Rule's looked like a very good coach, so they've had some pretty solid games this year. And Vikings are still technically in the hunt, I guess. Looking at the stats, Teddy Bridgewater was 19 for 36, 267 yards, 1 touchdown, and a pick. Mike Davis was their leading rusher, 15 carries for 55 yards. And their leading receiver was Robbie Anderson, 4 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. As for the Vikings, Kirk Cousins was 34 for 45, 307 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Really good game from Kirk Cousins. Rushing-wise, Dalvin Cook, 18 carries for 61 yards. That's actually kind of a slow day for him lately, but obviously he's still tearing it up. And as for their leading receiver, it was, BZ Johnson this week. Kind of weird without having Jefferson and Thielen was out, I think, so that's probably why he wasn't leading. But he had 7 catches for 74 yards. But it is worth mentioning that Jefferson only had 4 yards less than him. He had 7 catches for 70 yards, and he also had 2 touchdowns, so that was kind of bigger by Jefferson. But Vikings keep themselves alive. I don't really know if they can lose again and still get into the playoffs, so that's kind of something to keep an eye on. And as for the Panthers, didn't expect to make the playoffs, but they've still put together a decent season so far. Next game, we got Cardinals at Patriots. Cardinals dropped one to the Patriots, 20-17. Patriots moved to 5-6. They're still in the hunt because there was a lot of 6-4 teams that lost in the AFC this week. As for the Cardinals, they fall to 6-5, and kind of let a team like the Vikings or maybe the Bears, if they can figure stuff out, back into the playoff picture possibly. So that's something to keep an eye on. This game definitely had some playoff implications in terms of wild card spots in each of the conferences. Neither of these teams are really division winner threats, but definitely wild card contenders. Looking at the stats, Kyler Murray had a less than stellar game, 23 for 34, 170 yards and a pick. Not a great game from him. He'd been kind of playing like an MVP candidate before that, so kind of tough to see him fall off a little bit. As for rushing, Kenyon Drake had 22 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. And DeAndre Hopkins was DeAndre Hopkins, 5 catches for 55 yards. I I mean, actually, that's not even an amazing game from him either. But, when Murray's kind of off, that kind of results in DeAndre Hopkins being a little bit off too. As for New England, Cam Newton only threw the ball 18 times, but completed 9 of those passes for 84 yards. But he also threw 2 picks. Pretty sloppy game from him through the air. Their leading rusher was Damian Harris. He had 14 carries for 47 yards. And their leading receiver was Jacoby Myers, 5 catches for 52 yards. I didn't watch this game, and I haven't really seen any highlights from it, but looking at the stats, it looks like the game was really sloppy. But a win's a win by the Patriots, and not a great one for the Cardinals to drop here. Next game we got is Dolphins at Jets. I bet you could about guess what happened in this one. The Jets lost. They fall to 0-11. Miami improves to 7-4 with a 20-3 win. Tua, it was now confirmed that he was actually hurt, so it looks like maybe the benching wasn't just because of performance, but also a little bit because of injury concern as well. So Ryan Fitzpatrick was back in, trying to work some Fitz magic. 24 for 39, 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was another guy I haven't really heard of. DeAndre Washington was their leading rusher. He had 13 carries for 49 yards, and their leading receiver was Devontae Parker. He had 8 catches for 119 yards. He's played very well lately. As for the Jets, Sam Darnold was back. He was 16 for 27, 197 yards and 2 picks. So not a great game from Darnold. As for the ground game for the Jets, ageless Frank Gore had 18 carries for 74 yards. I don't know how this dude's still almost carrying the ball 20 times a game at this age. It's pretty ridiculous. Receiving wise for the Jets, Bernard Perryman had 4 catches for 79 yards. So everyone expected the Dolphins, to win this game, and they won. It was a decent margin. They won by 17. So good win by the Dolphins. They stay just one game behind the Bills. They might have a chance to win the division down the stretch. You never know. And as for the Jets, Trevor Lawrence, you better just kind of get ready to go here. I think you're probably heading to the Jets. Next game, we got Browns at Jacksonville. The Jaguars made this probably a little bit more interesting than the Browns would have liked. The Mike Lennon-led Jaguars. But the Browns did win it 27-25. They improved to 8-3. Believe it or not, they're 2 games ahead of the Ravens. I don't know how many people would have predicted that coming into the season. But looking at the stats, Baker Mayfield was 19 for 29, 258 yards and 2 touchdowns. Very solid game from Baker. He's very effective, decent completion rate, 2 touchdowns, no picks. So that's a good game from Baker. That's what they need from him. As for rushing for the Browns, per usual, it was great. Nick Chubb, 19 carries, 144 yards and a touchdown. And it's also worth mentioning that Kareem Hunt had 10 carries for 62 yards. Receiving-wise, Jarvis Landry had himself a day, 8 catches, 143 yards, and a touchdown. As for the Jaguars, Mike Glennon, 20 for 35, 235 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Surprisingly good game from Glennon, in my opinion. And rushing-wise, the rookie James Robinson continues to put together a really good year, 22 carries for 128 yards and a touchdown. And receiving-wise, they had Colin Johnson leading the way. He had 4 catches for 96 yards, I believe. Yep, 4 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. So, decent game from him. Like I said, Jacksonville probably did about all they could in this game. They competed much better than I would have ever thought they would have with Mike Glennon in at quarterback. But in the end, the Browns were just better than them. And the Browns are definitely going to make the playoffs now, I'd say. Like I said, a lot of 6-4 teams dropped some games. Or maybe it just seems like a lot because the significant ones did. But I firmly believe the Browns will make the playoffs. There's a slight chance they could win a playoff game. I don't really know. They don't match up particularly well with some of the division winners in the AFC. But I don't know. If they run the ball well, Baker Mayfield takes care of the ball, the Browns could definitely probably squeak out a playoff win. As for the Jaguars, they're maybe they are still in the running for Trevor Lawrence if the Jets accidentally win a game. But if not, they'll still end up with Justin Fields, who's a very good prospect. Assuming they move off of Gardner Minshew, which I believe they will. Next game, we got New Orleans at Denver. For those of you who didn't know, Denver's entire quarterback room was out with COVID, so they called up practice squad receiver Kendall Hinton to play for them, and it did not go well. Saints won 31-3, improved to 9-2, and they're the number 1 seed in the NFC currently. Denver fell to 4-7. Taysom Hill still on at quarterback for the Saints. He was 9 for 16, 78 yards, 1 pick, so nothing real special from him. The Saints' leading rusher was Latavius Murray. He had 19 carries for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver was Michael Thomas, 4 catches for 50 yards. The Saints did not have to do much in this game. Their defense did a lot because of Kendall Hinton to meet in there. You feel bad for Kendall Hinton. He got thrown in he got thrown to the wolves is what happened. The NFL, I did not like the decision to make the Broncos play. They bent over backwards for the Ravens. I thought it was pretty ridiculous that they made the Broncos play this game. But props to the Broncos, props to Kendall Hinton for even going out there and competing. But he was 1 for 9, 13 yards and 2 picks. It's never good when you throw more picks than you have completions. The ground game didn't do much either because I know some Broncos fans that I was talking to, I didn't watch the game, but they said that the Saints were putting like 9 guys in the box, which is just like, I mean, obviously it's the NFL, so they're going to do whatever they can to win, but it's like, come on, Saints. Like, you know the situation they were in? Like, give them something. But anyways, their leading rusher was Royce Freeman. He had 8 carries for 50 yards. Their leading receiver was Noah Fant. 1 catch, 13 yards. It was the only catch of the game for the Broncos. So, yeah, there's not a lot to say about this game. It was a pummeling. Feels bad for the Broncos, but I mean, it's not like they're in playoff contention anyways, so it's not the end of the world. Next game, we got 49ers at Rams. Big win by the 49ers. They kept themselves in the playoff picture with a 23-20 win over the Rams, who fell to 7-4. 49ers improved to 5-6. I was kind of disappointed in the Rams. This was a game that they should have won. It was at home. They could have stayed, right neck and neck with the Seahawks for the NFC West. I thought they looked very good this year so far, but sometimes they're kind of up and down. They kind of have some clunkers like this where they lose to a team that they should beat. Nick Mullins with 24 for 35, 252 yards and a pick. Raheem Mostert had 16 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown. And Deebo Samuel, he was playing well, 11 catches for 133 yards. As for the Rams, Goff did not have a very good game. 19 for 31, 198 yards, 2 picks. Cam Akers had 9 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. He led the way for them on the ground. And receiving-wise, Robert Woods had 7 catches for 80 yards. He led them. But like I said, Rams are still definitely going to make the playoffs, most likely as a wild card. I think the Seahawks will probably win the division, but the Rams are still definitely in the running for the division. They're only a game back. But this was a game that they probably should not have dropped. But the 49ers shown some grit, shown some determination. I thought they would stay in the playoff picture even without some of this injuries. They were obviously very beaten up, and props to them for keeping in it. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm pretty sure, is not out for the year. So maybe if they sneak in the playoffs, he comes back. Maybe they got a chance, but I don't know. I really don't think the 49ers will make the playoffs, but there's still definitely a chance that they will. Next game, Chiefs at Bucks. This was a kind of an up and down game. First half, the Chiefs led 20-7. Brady didn't play very well in the first half, and Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill were just tearing them apart. Looking at the stats, Mahomes was 37-49, 462 yards and 3 touchdowns, continues to play like the MVP. On the ground, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 11 carries for 37 yards, and Tyreek Hill had probably the best individual performance that we've seen this year. Definitely by a receiver and possibly by any player. He had 13 catches for 269 yards and 3 touchdowns. If you had Tyreek Hill in fantasy this week, congrats on the dub. He had like 58 points. It was pretty ridiculous. As for the Bucks, Tom Brady was 27 for 41, 345 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Like I said, Brady played really poor in the first half, but he played really well in the second half and nearly brought them back for a win. Ronald Jones had 9 carries for 66 yards, and as for receiving, Brady was hooking up with Gronk for 6 catches and 106 yards. So, like I said, I don't know. I guess I don't even know if I mentioned the final score yet. Chiefs won 27-24. They improved to 10-1. Tampa Bay falls to 7-5. So Tampa Bay is another one of those teams who are in the wild card runnings in the NFC. I never expected them to win their division. Some people did for some reason. I didn't really see it because Brady, I think, is not quite himself. And, it's a new coach, new quarterback, new system for Brady. So I never expected them to win the division, but I expected them to be in the wild card hunt. And that's right where they are, right about where I expected Tampa Bay to be. As for the Chiefs, they've just looked unstoppable lately. Their offense is ridiculous. They nearly let the Bucks come back in this one, which was, I don't know if you want to call it risky, but nevertheless, they got the win, and they looked very good this season. So once again, Chiefs 27, Bucks 24. Sunday Night Football, Bears at Packers. The Bears have been playing very poor coming into the game, and that poor play continued with Mitchell Trubisky back under center after Nick Foles had been starting for a while, but he got hurt last week, so Trubisky was back. But the Packers took care of business at home, 41-25. They moved to 8-3. Still leading the NFC North. I don't really see them losing that. A lot would have to go wrong for the Packers, and everything else would have to go right for the Vikings and or Bears. But Bears fall to 5-6. They became the first team in NFL history to win 5 of their first 6 games and then lose 5 straight after that. So not a great look from the Bears lately. Mitchell Trubisky was 26 for 46, 242 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. He didn't play awful, I guess, but I don't know. A lot of those stats came in garbage time, and he made some pretty aired throws. So not a super great game for Trubisky. As for the ground game, though, David Montgomery had 11 carries for 103 yards. I think he's a very underrated back. He doesn't get to really shine much in Chicago's offense. I wish Nagy would run the ball more. I think it would take a lot of pressure off Trubisky and Foles, especially when Trubisky's starting. I don't understand why they don't do some play action. Get the ground game going, make the defense come up, then get Trubisky on a play action bootleg. He's much better on the move when he has the option to run if he needs to. Don't make Trubisky just drop back and throw from the pocket. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, obviously with Nick Foles, you probably have to, but keep the defense honest. Give David Montgomery the ball a little bit more. The guy's a good running back. Receiving-wise for the Bears, Allen Robinson had 8 catches for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. Green Bay, Rodgers continues to play like an MVP candidate as well. I would still say Mahomes is in the lead, but Rodgers is right on his heels. He had 21 completions for 29 yards. 29. Hoofda. Let's restart there. He was 21 for 29, 211 yards and 4 touchdowns. Really, really phenomenal game from Rodgers. He had half as many touchdowns as he did in completions, so a great game from him. Rushing-wise for the Packers, Aaron Jones led them, 17 carries, 90 yards. And receiving-wise, Robert Tonyan had 5 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown. So, clean game from the Packers. They did mostly everything well, and they took care of the struggling Bears. Next game, we got Monday Night Football. Typically our last game of the week, but not this week. 2020, I guess. It was Seahawks at Eagles. The Eagles continue to look bad. The Seahawks didn't look very good in this game, though, either. I thought this game was kind of it was kind of a clunker. It just wasn't a great game by either team. The Seahawks did win, though, 23-17. They moved to 8-3, and the Eagles fall to 3-7-1. They lose their lead in the NFC East. Russell Wilson was 22 for 31, 230 yards and a touchdown. Chris Carson had 8 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown. And DK Metcalf was my player of the game. He had 10 catches for 177 yards. So, I don't know. The Seahawks got it done, but the Eagles have been very bad. Carson Wentz was 25 for 45, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Wentz threw another pick. He continues to lead the league in interceptions. He's got to quit turning the ball over. Jalen Hurts did come in for one play. He threw a pass, got 6 yards. He also handed off the ball once and got a penalty on another. But some Eagles fans are calling for Carson Wentz's job. I'm not doing that yet, but the guys got to just figure out a way to quit turning over the ball. As for rushing for the Eagles, Wentz actually led them there as well. He had 5 carries for 42 yards. They only gave Miles Sanders 6 carries for 15 yards. That's another thing, though. The Eagles are not helping Wentz out. His O-line is awful. He's the most sacked quarterback in the league. I mean, part of that's his problem because he holds onto the ball a little bit too long, but also his offensive line is not good at all. His receivers have underperformed all year. Again, his leading receiver was Dallas Goedert with 7 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. His second leading receiver, Richard Rodgers, 3 catches for 53 yards and a touchdown. So his 2 leading receivers were tight ends. His third leading receiver was a running back. He also has a star tight end that's on IR in Zach Ertz. So he doesn't have anybody to throw to. His line's awful. Doug Peterson did not help him out with the play calling. He needs to run the ball more, establish the run, make teams play honest. I don't know. There's a lot wrong with the Eagles right now, and they got to figure it out quickly. However, we're going to move to the final game. It was Wednesday afternoon football, if you can believe that. It was Ravens at Steelers. The Ravens had a lot of guys out with coronavirus, close contacts, or just having it. They're missing both of their starting running backs, Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins. They're missing the star receiver, Willie Snead, and superstar quarterback Lamar Jackson. But the final score of the game was 19-14. Pittsburgh won and improved 11-0. Baltimore lost, falling 6-5, and I think they're technically out of the playoff picture right now. I haven't actually looked at the full breakdown yet, but I might go take a quick peek at that here in a second. The leading passer for the Ravens was TikTok clout god Trace McSorley. He was 2 for 6, 77 yards and a touchdown. RG3 did start the game, though. He was 7 for 12, 33 yards and 1 pick. His pick was pretty bad. Joe Hayden took it to the house. It was in their own red zone, or, the Ravens were inside their own 20. But RG3 ended up pulling a hamstring, I believe. So RG3 just can't stay healthy either. That's also kind of, sad. But, the GOAT, Trace McSorley, got to come in. So that was cool to see. And before he went out, RG3 was their leading rusher. He had 7 carries for 68 yards. And Marquise Hollywood Brown, leading receiver, 4 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. He's been pretty underwhelming this year. So I guess at least he had a good day. He took Trace McSorley's touchdown, was not really much for Trace McSorley. Hollywood took it like 50 yards on the ground. Trace McSorley threw like 10, 15 yards, and then he took it the rest of the way. As for the Steelers, they didn't play great. I thought they should have pummeled a Ravens team, missing their 2 starting running backs, their best receiver, and their starting quarterback, especially a quarterback as electric as Lamar. But Ben Roethlisberger was 36 for 51, 266 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Benny Snell was their leading rusher. He had 16 carries for 60 yards. James Conner was out. Leading receiver for Pittsburgh was Eric Ebron, 7 catches for 54 yards. The Steelers, I don't know. They should have won this game by more, but nevertheless, they improved 11-0. I think it's probably one of the shakiest undefeated starts for this long by a team in NFL history. Of the teams to make it halfway through the year in NFL history and still be undefeated, the Steelers have got to be one of the shakiest. They've had some really close wins against some teams they definitely should have just blown out. So that's a little bit concerning. I think I'm going to put the Chiefs above them in my power rankings this week because they just haven't looked great, and the Chiefs have definitely looked better on the eye test lately. But nevertheless, the Steelers are still 11-0. You can't take that away from them. Baltimore, I think, does fall out of the playoff picture. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm going to go check that out right now. But all in all, it was a good week of games. There was a decent amount of playoff implications within the games. But now I'm finding the playoff picture here. So we're going to take a look at that. Okay, so at the AFC, we got number 1 Pittsburgh, 11-0. 2 Kansas City at 10-1. The 3 seed, I guess, is the Titans now, 8-3. They win the tiebreaker over Buffalo based on head-to-head percentage, I'm guessing this is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Titans beat the Bills early in the year, so that's what that is. Titans are above the Bills. Bills are at 4. Browns are at 5. I'm sure if you told any Browns fan or any NFL fan in the entire nation a couple years ago that the Browns were going to be the 5 seed in the playoffs in a couple of years, they would not have believed you. But that's what they are. Coming in at number 6, we got Miami at 7-4. They win the tiebreaker over Indianapolis based on percentage in conference games, and Indianapolis is at 7-4. The Raiders and the Ravens are both at 6-5, outside looking in, as well as the Patriots at 5-6. Broncos, Texans, those guys are next, but I don't see them making the playoffs. As for the NFC, New Orleans is 9-2, sole possession of the number 1 seed right now. They control their own destiny. 2 of the Seahawks, they win the tiebreaker over the Packers at 8-3 based on strength of or victory, I'm guessing. And then coming in at number 3 is the Packers, also at 8-3. Number 4 is the Giants. They're currently in the lead in the NFC East. They win the tiebreaker over Washington based on head-to-head win percentage, I believe, also. Yep. And then coming in at number 5, we've got the Rams at 7-4. 6 is the Bucks at 7-5, and 7 is the Cardinals at 6-5. The teams that are in the hunt in the NFC are the Vikings at 5-6, the Bears at 5-6, and the Niners at 5-6. So there's your playoff picture. That's your NFL Week 12 recap. And now we're going to be looking at NFL Week 13, previewing some of those games. So yeah, that's what we're going to do next. All right, now it's time for our NFL Week 13 preview. There's a decent amount of good matchups going on this week with some heavy playoff implications. So we're just going to dive right into it. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but I wanted to go through it quickly. So first we got Saints at Falcons. I see the Saints getting a win here on the road. They should take care of business against the Falcons, who are coming off a very good win against the Raiders. It could be interesting. I believe Taysom Hill's still playing. I'm not 100% sure, but I still think the Saints will get it done on the road. Coming in on our next game, we got Lions at Bears. Game between two teams who are struggling recently, but I do think it's a great game for the Bears to get back on track. I think they get a win at home, get back to 500 at 6-6. Lions will have a new interim head coach filling in after the firing of Matt Patricia. So I think the Bears get a close victory at home. Next game, we got Browns-Titans. This one's going to be one of the biggest games of the week, I think. 2 8-3 teams. Titans currently lead their division at 8-3. Browns are obviously not in the lead because the Steelers are 11-0. But two very similar playstyle teams. They're both pretty physical, run the ball, keep the ball out of the quarterback's hands. So that'll be a fun game to watch for especially old school fans of football. Next game is Bengals at Dolphins. The Dolphins should take care of business at home. I think Tua will be back for this game, so that should be something to watch for if he plays well back in his return. And like I said, the Dolphins are still challenging for a AFC East crown, so that's something to keep an eye on too. Bengals should probably continue to struggle without Joe Burrow. Next game, we got Jags at Vikings. Vikings should get an easy win at home. They should move to 500, which should be good for them in terms of the playoff hunt. The Jags will fall to 1-11. They'll continue to try to win the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. And, Justin Fields is probably one of the best consolation prizes you could get in any draft class. Next game, we got Raiders at Jets. Raiders should take care of business on the road. Jets better be careful not to mess around and win a game by accident here down the stretch because the Jaguars are right on their tails for Trevor Lawrence. But Raiders should get back to 7-5 and continue to keep themselves firmly in the playoff picture. Next game, Colts at Texans. Colts are going to be on the road against the Texans. Colts better be careful. I think they'll probably win the game, but the Texans are frisky. Deshaun Watson's a very, very good player. Like I said, I think he'd be a borderline MVP candidate if his team was any better. But Colts better be careful not to lose this one and fall 2 games behind the Titans if they were to beat the Browns. So that's definitely a game to watch because the Texans are very frisky. They could beat the Colts, but I do think the Colts will go down to Texas and win. Next, we got Rams at Cardinals. Cardinals haven't looked great lately, and the Rams are kind of up and down. And it seems like usually when they have a bad game, they come back with a better game. So I'm going to take the Rams to win this one. I do think they're a little bit better team all around than the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals actually have overperformed just a little bit this year. I expected them to be a lot better this year, somewhere around 500. But right now they're on pace to probably be more like 10-6. And I do think that's overachieving just a little bit for them. As for the Rams, I thought they were going to be better than most people thought. I had them about 9-7, 10-6. But I think they're going to possibly finish even better than I thought. So I got the Rams going down and winning a close one against the Cardinals. Next, we got Giants at Seahawks. Seahawks should take care of business at home, but you never know. The Giants are a decent team. But Daniel Jones being out, I would just think that the Seahawks should take care of business. But if Daniel Jones is playing, maybe the Giants could make it interesting. But without him, I don't really see them doing much. Next game, Eagles at Packers. As a Packers fan, and just as a football fan in general, I think the Packers will win this game quite easily. As for the Eagles, though, they could be dangerous if Wentz plays well, if he takes care of the ball, and they can maybe figure out how to call plays and run the ball a little bit. So I don't know. The Eagles do make me just a little bit nervous as a Packers fan, just because I feel like they have the quarterback and some of the talent to do it if they can just put it together. And you never know; it could just be a breakout week for them. But I think the Packers will take care of business at home. Next game, Patriots at Chargers. Belichick loves to just mess with young quarterbacks, so I do kind of worry about Herbert in this game. I don't think he'll play fantastic. I think the Patriots will probably win and get back to 6-6, 500, and keep themselves in the playoff picture in the AFC. And the Chargers will probably continue to struggle this year, which is, it's okay because Herbert's a rookie. They don't need to win right now. Next game, Broncos at Chiefs. This one could be ugly. The Chiefs are probably going to dismantle the Broncos, move to 11-1. Broncos haven't been good all year. Look for the Chiefs to win by at least 2 touchdowns. Then we got 2 Monday Night Football games. I guess one's technically Monday afternoon. We got the football team at the Steelers. Steelers should take care of business at home. But like I said earlier, the Steelers do seem to struggle sometimes with teams that they should easily beat. So Washington maybe could make things interesting. You never know. Their defense is pretty good. It's a young defense, but it's pretty skilled, I'd say, for Washington. And as for the Steelers, just get it done, Steelers. Get it done at home. Don't let Washington make this scary for you. The actual Monday Night Football game, we got Bills at Niners. The Niners are at home, but I think the Bills will probably get the win. It would be a huge win if the Niners were to win. For the Dolphins and for the Niners would really keep themselves in the playoff picture then, especially if the Cardinals were to lose to the Rams. And as for the Bills, if they were to drop this one and Miami pretty much has a sure win against the Jets, they're going to be tied for the division lead, and it's going to come down to a late season matchup between the Bills and the Dolphins, probably for the AFC East. Finally, we got Tuesday Night Football. All the scheduling is just still messed up due to the Steelers and Ravens kind of mishaps. I also didn't even mention that Thursday Night Football this week was canceled. I don't even know who was supposed to play, but I'm guessing it must have had something to do with the Steelers and the Ravens. But we do have a Tuesday Night Football game. Cowboys at Ravens. Ravens should take care of business. I'm not sure if Lamar's going to be back. I heard there's a chance he might, but he also might not. But either way, I don't care who's under center for the Ravens, whether it's Lamar or RG3 or Trace McSorley. I think the Ravens will get stuff done at home against a Cowboys team that's just flat out bad. We do have two teams on bye, which is pretty late in the season. It's week 13, so I hope anybody who's starting fantasy playoffs doesn't have too much for Bucks or Panther stars. But those two teams are on bye, so that's something to kind of just keep in mind. And that's about all I had for my week 13 preview. So next thing we're going to be moving into is college football. All right, now it's time for a week 13 college football recap. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because there wasn't a whole lot going on, but there was some just kind of key games I wanted to hit just really quickly for you all. Notre Dame, number 2 in the nation, won again, 31-17 over 19 North Carolina. North Carolina did kind of give them a scare. It was 17-17 at the half, but Notre Dame scored 2 touchdowns in the second half to win by 2 possessions, and they left the Tar Heels scoreless in the second half. Maybe the biggest game of the weekend was Iowa State and Texas. Iowa State won 23-20. They were 13 in the nation coming into the game. Texas was 17. But more than anything, I think this was just a program win for Iowa State. Texas has kind of been a power in college football. I mean, maybe not recently as much, but they're a historic program. Iowa State isn't super historic. So this is more of a culture one, I feel like, for Iowa State. Even though Texas isn't super great this year, still getting a win over a historically great Big 12 team is really big for them, I feel like. And I think they may have moved into top 10 in the rankings this week. I'm not 100% sure. Next game is the Iron Bowl, Auburn, Alabama. Saban was not on the sidelines for Alabama. He had COVID, so some people were a little bit concerned about that, Alabama not having Nick Saban there. But the tide rolled 42-13. Mac Jones played very well again. He had 302 yards and 5 touchdowns. Really great game from him. He's right in the Heisman conversation. Clemson won again. We don't really need to cover that game. Florida won 34-10. Kyle Trask, another guy who's in the Heisman conversation. I'd say right now it's between Trask and Mac Jones for the win. I'd give the narrow edge to Trask right now, but Mac Jones played very well as well. The only reason I kind of give the edge to Trask is just he's been just a tad more consistent, I feel like, and he's done a little bit more with less. So that's just kind of my thoughts on it. Number 8 Northwestern lost. They're coming off a big win against a pretty good Wisconsin team, but the college football playoff put them at number 8 in the rankings, but then they lost to a Michigan State team who was 1-3 coming into the game. So not a great look for them. And yeah, I think that was about all I really had for games. Ohio State had another game cancellation, so that kind of hurts them. I don't know if they're going to be able to play enough games to get into the college football playoff, so that's kind of something to keep an eye on as well. But now taking a look ahead at Week 14, some of the bigger matchups going on. We got Indiana and Wisconsin, 12-16. Wisconsin's not eligible for the Big Ten championship game at this point, but they're still 16th in the nation. They had one kind of, I feel like it was kind of a fluke loss to Northwestern, but so that's going to be a big game, Indiana, Wisconsin. Ohio State has Michigan State this week. That's kind of something to keep an eye on, I guess. Texas A&M and Auburn. Auburn's not ranked anymore, but Texas A&M does got to be careful because they're number 5. They're on the outside looking in at the playoff right now. A dominating win over Auburn could still carry some weight a little bit. You never know. I don't know. There's just not a ton for ranked matchups this week, but there is one that I can think of off the top of my head, and that's BYU and Coastal Carolina. So some people thought BYU didn't get enough credit in the college football playoff ranking. I believe the AP poll had them at like 8 or something like that, and then the college football playoff put them at 13. So a lot of people felt like BYU was maybe disrespected a little bit, being at 9-0, and having an MVP candidate with Zach Wilson, or not MVP, Heisman candidate with Zach Wilson, and Coastal Carolina is also 9-0. They're 18th right now. So this game was rescheduled because who was it? I think it was like Tulsa maybe, or can't remember 100% who Coastal Carolina was supposed to play. But this was kind of rescheduled, and BYU is going to get a game against a ranked opponent, so maybe they can go up in the rankings a little bit. I never think they'll have any chance of getting into the playoff, but I don't know. I guess they have a chance to show a little bit. But other than that, there's not a lot for ranked matchups to really watch for this week. So that's kind of my college football wrap up, recapping week 13 and a preview of week 14. But that's about all I got there. Next, we're going to talk NBA. Okay, so this NBA segment is going to be real on. I was just going to hit a couple key things that happened in the NBA over the past couple days. So, first of all, Anthony Davis and LeBron James both committed to the Lakers long term. LeBron added on a 2-year extension to his contract, which already had a year or two left on it. So now I think he's there for 3 or 4 years with the Lakers. I think it's 4. As for AD, though, he signed a 5-year max extension with a player option in the 5th year, I believe. So the Lakers were locking up their 2 stars for long term, and it looks like they're really going to make some runs at some titles. They've really beefed up their roster this offseason. So the Lakers are really looking to make a push for some titles, I think, here towards the tail end of LeBron's career. And also, Anthony Davis is probably going to take over once LeBron's done. One thing I guess some people were mentioning too was LeBron actually lined up his contract where I believe he's a free agent once Bronny is draft eligible. So I guess that's kind of interesting. Maybe LeBron did that on purpose to, possibly play with Bronny for like a year or 2 and then retire. You never know. I think that's maybe a little bit far-fetched, but that's something, I guess. As for Anthony Davis, like I said, Lakers locked him in long term. I don't think it was ever a thought that he was not going to sign with them. I sure believe that he was going to come back. I wasn't sure how long the contract was going to be, but looks like they're committed to him long term. He's committed to them long term. Now, the other news that happened was big trade in the NBA. Russell Westbrook from the Rockets was traded to the Wizards for John Wall. Many of you know John Wall has been out the last couple years with an Achilles tear. Happened when he was like in his house going down the stairs or something like that. So Westbrook's heading to Washington and Wall's heading to Houston. I think that I'm not 100% sure how the logistics of the trade worked out, I guess, but I think the Wizards probably had to send a pick back with Wall because I think Westbrook's definitely better than Wall, or at least he's more certain to be at least great, to an extent, because Wall, that's an Achilles tear is a pretty bad injury, especially for a guy like Wall who's so explosive. I mean, Wall and Westbrook are actually pretty similar players. Wall shoots the ball a little bit better, and Westbrook's probably just a little bit more explosive, but I don't know. All in all, though, they're pretty similar athleticism and stuff like that. So they're just kind of flipping players, but Wall probably does fit better with Harden. The reports were that Harden wanted to play with Wall. He didn't really want to play with Westbrook anymore. Westbrook wanted out anyways. So all in all, it probably works out kind of good for both teams. But technically, I would probably say that the Wizards won the trade because I feel like they have a better chance to make some noise maybe in the East, just because Bradley Beal's kind of a spot-up shooter a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that he's only a spot-up shooter because Bradley Beal's a very good player, but one of the most underrated guys in the league, really. But Westbrook and Beal would definitely work better than Harden and Westbrook, and Harden and Wall will definitely work better than Harden and Westbrook as well. So both teams kind of won the trade, I feel like. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably say the Wizards won just because they got a little bit of a better player or a more surefire good player with Westbrook. And I would look for the Wizards to definitely make the playoffs in the East this year and maybe even get up towards that maybe 4 or 5-ish seed range. That would probably be a good spot for them. But that's really all that the NBA news I had. I know I didn't have a lot for the college football and the NBA, just due to my big NFL segment to catch up on. But that's about all I had for topics today. So, yeah, that's all I got. All right, thank you for tuning in to today's podcast episode, whether that be listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else where you get your podcasts, or watching us here on YouTube. We appreciate all the support. Make sure you go like us on Facebook, The Sports Report. Follow us on Instagram at The Sports Report with a Z. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube. Drop a like on this video. Drop a comment. Give us a 5-star rating in Apple Podcasts. Do whatever. Get the word out about the podcast. Feel free to share it. We love bringing content to all you guys, and definitely keep watching the YouTube channel. I'm going to definitely be bringing a lot more content here, and it won't be just podcasts. It'll be like stuff that maybe isn't like suitable so much for the podcast audience, but more just, like I said in my intro video, some power rankings and mock drafts, stuff like that. Just kind of diving into some of the stuff that I post on my other accounts. And also the website, thesportsreport.com. Check that out for some good articles. And so, yeah, once again, just thank you for listening/watching. Remember, 5 stars. Like us on YouTube. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook. Instagram, everything. Thank you for all your support, and I'll see you Tuesday.